Welcome to the Her Voice Shines podcast, where we celebrate the power, brilliance, and resilience of women everywhere. I'm your host, Shanasia Washington. Join us as we share inspiring stories and insights from extraordinary women who have found their voice and are making a difference. Together, we'll create a ripple effect, illuminating the path to visibility and empowerment. Let's break barriers, shatter ceilings, and lift each other up. In each episode, we dive deep into the journeys of women who have turned their challenges into triumphs and their dreams into reality. Whether you're looking for motivation, guidance, or a community that understands your journey, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and remember, let your voice shine. And just like that, we've landed at another amazing episode of the Her Voice Shines podcast. I am your beautiful host, Shanasia Washington, streaming from none other than Houston, Texas. And let me tell you guys, in the podcast land today for recording and really the entire week, it has been the best yet. And I'm very honored to be here because we've gotten the most amazing stories. And today is no different. Whoever guest is going to come to stage, do our normal drill, which is tell us her name, where she's streaming from, and then we get the magic of that story. Without any further waiting time, here's my very beautiful guest for today.
Hello. Hi. So my name is Lisa Winter and I'm streaming from the UK. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening here and it's a beautiful early summer's evening. My story really begins back in 2023. I am a mother to 6 earthly children and I have one daughter in spirit. As I said, my story basically begins back in 2023, where I was blissfully expecting my 7th child. As you can imagine, I was overjoyed to be bringing another child into the family. I've always wanted a big family ever since I was a little girl. My mum's got stories where I was always just playing with dollies, and whereas other people had inspirations for being doctors, nurses, and all those wonderful attributes that contribute to the world, all I ever was like, oh, I want to be a mummy. I want to raise my family. I want a big, big family. So it was a really strong calling from such a young age to raise a really big family and be surrounded by all this love. All my other pregnancies had been perfect, textbook pregnancies. I sailed through them, the pregnancies, the deliveries, absolutely fine. Just a dream time. And then I fell pregnant with my 7th child. And right from the offset, I had interrupting dreams. They were really disturbing. I had just really unpleasant feelings. That's like that gut feeling that you get really deep. Nothing just really felt right. And I thought, it's okay. I'm an older mum now. You know, I've had gaps between my children. I was coming up to be nearly 40. I am now 40. And I just put it down to it's your anxiety, it's your age, it's just other contributing factors that might obviously influence why I'm feeling this way. And I could never shake off the dreams. The dreams were really, really vivid. And they weren't pleasant dreams. They were dreams that I've never associated with pregnancy before because, as I said, all my other pregnancies were just like beautiful textbook. So then we arrived to the 20th of July, which was a Thursday morning. I remember that really well. And I was going for a routine scan. It was one of the scans in the UK that you can actually ask to have gender reveal. So they will, if they can, they will tell you the gender, but mainly it's to check the baby's internal organs and the function and the, you know, all the other things that they need to check in order to ensure that the pregnancy is a health, safety pregnancy to continue. And I'd already had anxious feelings about this because, as I've mentioned before, I've been getting really disturbing and interrupting dreams ever since I found out I was pregnant. And one clear dream was that I went for a scan and the sonograph lady who was doing my scan, she turns to me and she says those dreaded words that I don't think any woman, we never want to hear them, and they're imprinted now. They're imprinted on your mind, in your heart. You know, they're just there, and it's, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. And that's when your world just sinks and everything around you just becomes so trivial, and you just realize that you are a bigger part of something that you were just blissfully asleep to before. And so I went to the scan, still holding positive hope, thinking that everything's going to be fine and it's just a silly dream. Stop being paranoid, Lisa, put it behind you. And then the door opened and I saw the sonograph lady's face, and my heart just collapsed inside my chest, because that was the face that had kept seeing in my dreams. So I went in and I laid on the bed, and she was taking forever, bless her. And I thought, it's okay, I have to take their time, they need to get this right. But then as the minutes ticked by, I thought, I've had scans before, I know how this works. This was the 7th child, so I was pretty aware of, like, they check, they have a little check, and then they turn the screen for us to see here in the United Kingdom. I appreciate it might be different in other countries, but here they do that, and then they turn the screen so that all's well for mum and baby. And she wasn't turning the screen, and she looked at me, and from the moment our eyes met in a gaze, in a lock, I knew before she even said it. And she took that breath, and it was as if time slowed down, because as she took that breath, I could literally felt like I could hear and see, like, the air going down her windpipe. I just felt like I was literally visualizing her feelings as well, and like I could just understand her emotions. I just felt like here I was, knowing what this news was going to be, but also at the same time feeling really connected with this complete stranger, because she was having to give me this devastating news. And I just burst into tears before she even said it. And that's when she said, "I'm really sorry, there's no heartbeat." And that's the day my world changed forever.
I honor you in that, Lisa. I really honor you in telling your story, and I don't take that story lightly. I do have a 7-year-old son. He'll be 8 next month. But prior to him, I suffered a miscarriage. I carried that baby it was very early on miscarriage, but kind of the same thing happened. We went in and we had a heartbeat at about 6 weeks or so. We've seen the heartbeat on the screen. That's typically what happens. And then when we went back, that same agonizing silence that you experience when the silence is like, I got chills. That silence is agonizing. That's the only way that I can really describe it, even at this point, 9 years later or 8 years later or so. It was just silence. I mean, they were just kind of poking around on the screen and there was just nothing. Whereas the first experience with the heartbeat, it was like, "Oh, mommy, you have a heartbeat." They turned the monitor around very quickly and here's all these things. But when they were quiet, it was kind of like, and then finally they left out of the room completely. And here I am alone in the room. And they come back into the room and they bring a third person into the room. I said, okay. At this point, you have to just tell me what's going on here. They said, "We don't see a heartbeat." They said, "We don't see anything." They said, there's a sac there. They said the sac is there, but there's nothing inside of the sac. And even though it hadn't been a very long term carrying, I was crushed. Yeah. And at the time, like, I really didn't fully process it. And then the other part of that was like, well, you still kind of have to go home. We have to give you medication to pass this sac. It was just an empty sac in there with nothing in it. Mm-hmm. So having to go home, live through their process. They were dragging their feet to give me the medication to actually have this thing happen. It changed me, right? Because in our family, of course, mothers have had babies for the longest amount of time. No one's having a conversation. No one's, I had never actually had any conversation, Lisa, with anybody. I'm being honest. I hadn't had any conversation with anybody about miscarriage. I can remember years ago when I was maybe like 9 or 10 or so, I had an aunt that miscarried her daughter. And I can kind of that term wasn't even used, but I can vaguely remember that time in our family's life. But at the end of the day, there was really no conversation or discussion, and I really had no idea around it. But to know how common it happens and the fact I had never had a conversation about it was really bizarre, I thought. But it was crushing. It was really crushing, and I really couldn't put into words the real pain I felt with my family, because I didn't even really know how to express it. It was such a short whirlwind. Oh, you're pregnant. Here's a heartbeat. And then like, there's the heartbeat. It's a lot of stuff to take in within a short amount of time. Let me ask you this, because I think this is a very important part of my story, and then yours, and probably many other women who have experienced this. Tell me about, how did motherhood and the spirit of your spirit baby, how does that awaken your deeper purpose? Because for me, I had a big shift, Lisa. I don't know about you, but I had a big shift after that. Tell me about how that awakened that deeper purpose within you.
Right. Well, for me, I think for a long time, I kind of went into self-destruct mode, which, looking back and reflecting now, I realized that I actually feel quite selfish about it, because obviously I did have my 6 beautiful living children that were healthy and still needed a mum. But I was grieving so much for I think it's not just the child that I lost, it's all those expectations that go with it, the dreams, the goals, the wanting to see my daughter in her school play, wanting to celebrate her first Christmas, losing her teeth, and getting her big teeth and waiting for the tooth fairy. It's all those wonderful things that we conjure up in our mind from the moment that we get a positive on that test. I was already planning a future. I was like, oh, I wonder what sort of career she would like. I wonder, what her wedding would be like. Because prior to this, I've got 5 boys and 1 daughter, and my daughter's my second born, so she's much older now, so she doesn't like to do all the girly things. She's quite independent, and she's basically just studying for exams. So the joy again of obviously finding out it was a girl as well was just like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have another little girl to do all those mummy daughter things with. And I think it was that bond. It was the bond that I craved so much. I have an amazing bond with all my children, but because this baby had been visiting me in my dreams ever since I found out I was pregnant, I already felt like the connection was just like phenomenal. And I didn't want to lose that connection. And that is what dragged me up from the depths, from literally being on suicide watch, where the NHS staff put me on suicide watch, and I was having daily phone calls and daily visits just to make sure that I was able to get through the day with the support from the staff. Literally, it just dragged me up from that low pit and flung me into a world that I was completely oblivious to. Because I kind of adopted the theory that if my daughter could come and visit me in my dreams and show me such prophetic dreams, as in she showed me her own death, she showed me the sonograph lady that would pass me the news, for me to be able to receive those messages from her as a warning or as a sign for her to let me know, then what's stopping me from continuing having those dreams, having those visions, having that contact with her? And that's when I went down the road of spirituality. So from a very early age, I was aware of psychics. I was aware of mediums. My mum and dad had had those shows on that, you usually get shows around Christmas. And then there used to be a lady called Psychic Meg that used to do the lottery, predict the lottery numbers and so forth. So growing up in that culture, I was aware of mediums and I was aware of psychics, but I don't really think I had a full grasp of what they do and how they connect and the deeper level that takes us on our own soul's journey. But I literally flung myself into everything. I started researching from shamans and how they connect to spirit through their trance and their dance. So I was investing in classes to try and sort of teach myself to help me understand and to connect with my own soul. Because I was very aware from all the research that I had done and the conversations I'd had with spiritual practitioners that the key to able to connect with spirit is obviously to know yourself, is to have a relationship with your higher self, because effectively it's your higher self, that part of you that connects in with the spirit world. So I was dedicated to healing myself and gaining mastery of my own soul in order to strengthen that connection with my child in spirit. And it was amazing the results I was getting. So I started meditating twice a day, and at first it was really quite tricky because I used to get really frustrated. I was thinking, well, nothing's happening, I'm sat here in darkness, I can't hear anything, I can't see anything. And I was kind of, first of all, using it just as a chance to relax, to let my physical body shut down and allow my spiritual body to be heard almost. And by doing that, that's when I realized that actually I was receiving messages and I was starting to get visions. And those visions were about events in my family or events with my friends. And then weeks later, my family or friends would tell me about something. And I was like, oh my days. I literally had that vision a couple of weeks ago, sat in meditation. So I really started to believe in myself. I started to believe that if this was coming true and I was seeing events that were happening for my family or for my friends, then what's to stop me seeking my development even further and making that connection with my own child? And by putting that practice in and by pouring love back into myself, because I think the key to making that connection with spirit, any spirit, your spirit child or any of your passed over loved ones, anybody in the spiritual realms, is you need to raise your frequency to meet their frequency. Because at the end of the day, all we are, once we take away this human body, is that we're energy, and even if you don't have a spiritual belief on that, science can back that up. Science will back it up and say that we all are made up of the atoms and the particles, which effectively is a vibration of sound and energy. And with that, spirit is also sound and energy. They don't have a physical body anymore, but they are still, energy can't die, you see. Energy just gets transmuted. So once the soul leaves the body, that energy will either go on to another life, if you believe in reincarnation, or it will stay in the spiritual realms doing work there to help other people here on earth doing their missions. And because of that, I started to receive messages from Aubrey. And one of the messages, which kind of just completely blew me away and made me sit back and reflect and think, well, what am I here for? What was your purpose, Aubrey? Why did you come for me for such a short time if you weren't continuing your path with me? But one message that she very clearly gave to me was that she wasn't meant to stay. She's not walked the earth plane, and she never will. So her soul, for whatever purpose that her soul, the work that she does, she just comes to bring lightness to me. So she came to be my awakening. She came for the short period of time because she knew in that period of time I would have a complete death and rebirth in like this spiritual sense, as in like that time that her body, when I birthed her into the world and I went into that dark depression where I was struggling to even brush my hair, focus on any care for myself, my family, that was my symbolic death, which shamans obviously believe as well. They believe that you have a death and a rebirth. And I was reborn into a world where I see it completely differently, as in that I feel more connected with the earth itself and connected with the spiritual realms. And my purpose, I feel, from what she was sharing with me, is to bring this gift that her parting gift of bringing that awareness to me is to hopefully pass that on to other women who are experiencing the same trauma and pain. If they could just be able to connect to their own child, think of all the wonderful healing that is going to bring to not only them, but their family and generations and future children. If we can all work from a healed frequency, we are not only healing our generation, our generations before us, but we are also standing strong and firm for future generations that may go through this.
Right. And that's a interesting perspective, right? And that takes a lot of work to get there. I do know that many women may not ever get to the level of clarity that you have around losing, your baby. So I think it's definitely beautiful work and strides for you personally for taking the journey to dig that deeper. Because the reality is some people never get that deep and walk with a lot more clarity. We're not saying it's not going to hurt. I mean, there's still some pain that's always going to be attached to that. I will never sit here and tell you otherwise because I don't roll like that. There's still some pain attached to it. But the reality of going through the work and saying, I have a better understanding, I am better grounded. And I know that as hurtful as this is, it was designed for my good. It's hard to think about, but that's really what it comes to. Now, kind of a segue into this is because now you've built this space where women can kind of really share their deepest and darkest parts. Tell me why do you think that radical truth, because that then becomes radical truth. Tell me really why you think that radical truth has such a powerful path to healing.
I think with respect to taking the path that I took and other women obviously taking that approach as well, where it's not only making that connection to your child in spirit, it's actually a journey of it's self-discovery. You learn things about yourself. You learn things. I mean, I learned things about my behavior and why I responded or acted to certain things that happened in my past. And I was able to use that. I don't like to use the word reprogram, but in a sense you do. You reprogram the way you see the world and the way you respond to it. And I think by doing so and trying to have a more positive outlook on situations, it's effectively helping your mental health and your physical health and your spiritual health, of course. And you just tend to work at a more well-rounded sort of approach to life. Of course, this isn't to say that every female, like you said, every woman that's gone through a loss, they might not get to this stage, and that is totally and completely fine, because that is what's important for them. We need to validate the women where they are on their journey, and I think no matter where a woman is, she needs to congratulate herself for whichever stage she is. I mean, it'd be absolutely amazing, and I'd love to think that all women were able to get to the part of the journey where they felt they could connect with their child in spirit. However, if they are only on certain earlier stages of that healing journey, that is still an amazing milestone for each woman that's had that loss. They need to really applaud themselves for being able to say, I had that trauma and I was able to continue caring for my family. I was able to continue my career, whatever that may be. Or they can even just turn around and say, I've accepted my loss, because that's a real big one. Because I personally never wanted to accept Aubrey's loss. That's hence the reason I went on that journey. I was like, I am not letting go of my daughter, no matter what anyone says. And that's why I wanted to keep that energetic connection with her if I couldn't have her in the flesh. But I think all women that get to the stage where they are able to function on any level, that is a milestone in itself. And, women need to really applaud themselves, because it's unimaginable. Child loss really is a pain that I can honestly say I don't think I've experienced anything deeper. And for somebody that might have not experienced a child loss, and obviously I don't wish it on anybody, but it's really hard to compare that pain for other women who are trying to share their journey. So I really do think that even if women are just able to have these conversations like we are, where they can literally acknowledge their child existed, say their child's name if their child had a name, just talk about any dreams or goals they had for their child, that in itself is just beautiful, because it's almost making the detachment from the horrible trauma that was their ending or the death of their child, but also taking it to another level where it's like, well, they're not lost, they're not forgotten, they're still in our memories, or they're still in our hearts. And in some cases, if you take a spiritual path, they're still with you in a different realm, in a different energetic field.
Yeah, sure. And I love what you said about a woman honoring where they are in their journey, right? Our paths are different, the way that we process information, our external stimuli. There's so many things that's different as it drives our healing process. So being vulnerable, I think, and bold enough to say that maybe I'm not where I want to be in my healing journey, but I'm here now, under the power of now, and I am committed to going to the next level. And that does not mean that I'm going to go at the same level that Shanasia does, or that at least a winner does, but
Yeah.
I'm on in the path to healing. So thanks for sharing that. Tell me about your book, Children of the Cosmos. Look, I love the name. I love that. Tell me about maybe the frequency. What did you channel? What were you channeling when you started to write those pages? And what are you hoping that people walk away with after they read Children of the Cosmos?
Well, my book is split into almost two parts. So it's almost like what we were just saying. Excuse me. As in, like, if a woman is on her journey and she's hoping to get to the point where she can connect with her child and spirit, there are exercises within the book that will help the woman do it at her own time and her own pace, and of course the privacy of her own safe space. However, the other part of the book is my own personal experience of my loss, and it's just literally my memoirs and my reflections on literally from the time I found out I was pregnant to when I had to deliver Aubrey's body into the world. And there's no sugarcoating in it. It literally is the raw, ugly truth of how I felt in each of those stages. And then there's a little bit of a reflection on how I feel about that now. So I'm hoping that my book is able to reach a vast range of women on every part of their journey, every part of that spectrum of their healing journey. I'd like to think that they would be able to flick through some pages in my book and they'd find something that was just of comfort to them, even if that was just validation for, yes, we're having a real shitty day here. I'm really struggling. I don't want to go on. I just want to be left alone, pull the curtains and hide from the world. Then that there will relate to those women. And that's where I want to sit with them and hold them in that space and say, you are heard, you are seen, you are validated. And then, of course, if there are women who are slightly maybe further on in their journey or a bit more adventurous on their journey, there's small exercises in there that literally build up to a bigger exercise at the end, which is a step-by-step guide on how, if they want to, they can connect with their child in spirit.
So beautiful. And I love the work that you're doing. I don't think it's a space, or maybe it could be me and just not aware enough, but I don't think it's a space that's talked about enough. I always claim it because of, like, it could definitely be you and your lens, but I think it's a place that's not talked about nearly enough. Now, since I've been on my journey, I have my own personal journey now that I'm starting to meet lots of other women who've experienced it. Now I'm like, why are we not talking about this? So I'm happy for you taking the charge and doing something that's a little bit kind of against the norm a little bit, because it's not a part of normal conversation flow. So I know that of course also has its challenges. I did want to ask you this because one of the things that I've seen, you said that your message is universal. And it really is a universal message. Tell me, how do you make this accessible? And we talked about this a little bit, but how do you make this accessible to women that are of different culture systems and of different beliefs? Because this is truly a universal message, and we kind of hinged on it at the beginning because you talked about even science proving that we're all kind of energy. And that's definitely an excellent segue to saying, hey, this is a universal thing. But what are you doing to make sure that's accessible to maybe someone who is of different cultural belief?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So basically, within the book, every part of it is designed to bring ease and comfort to all women, like you say, of all cultures. And I would like to think there's no part of the book that is really pushy, as in, like, this is what you must believe. And I think without every chapter, I have reflective parts where I do talk about traditions from not only like my culture and what I was brought up, because I was brought up as a Christian, but I don't actually practice as a Christian anymore, because I like to think, like you say, that I'm taking a more universal approach. And therefore, when I was writing my book, I did actually look into other religions and their beliefs around child loss and honouring what they do for their child loss. For example, in my book, there are some guided rituals which you can do to remember your child, to give offerings to your child. And they're all based on different religions all around the world and different cultures. Like, for example, in Mexico, they quite often have a day, the Day of the Dead, where they remember the dead, don't they, and have a feast to celebrate. And that's mentioned in the book because that's very important for somebody that is trying to honour and remember their loved one that's passed on. And there's little examples in there of how they could adapt that to their own belief system, no matter where they are all around the world. It's just trying to literally pull in from all that. It's the universe is a vast web of existence and knowledge and consciousness, and it's just pulling in from all those different aspects all around the world, using what they've done for thousands of years prior to this, and just literally sitting with it and saying, well, what works for one isn't going to work for the other. And that, of course, is completely respectable and acceptable on every level. And that's why I like to think that my book is not a pushy book. It's not telling somebody that's right, that's wrong, you must believe in this spiritual belief, you must do this. It's almost like a hidden language where it's really speaking about the frequency that we're trying to hold, the frequency that we're trying to reach to make that connection, not only for our child and spirit, but for the self-healing journey of love. Because love is a universal language. Every culture, every country understands the importance of love. And my whole book is wrote from a perspective of how the woman needs to come back to the heart space, and how she needs to honor and love herself in order to start that healing and to start that process, if she would like to get to the point where she can connect with her child and spirit.
And you know what the most important part of this segment is, that love yourself piece, because even beyond that particular situation, me having a miscarriage and just going further on in my journey as it relates, I was saying that there was this version of myself where I said I love myself and I didn't hate myself for anything. I wasn't doing things that were super like detrimental to my being, but I hadn't really fully tapped into the core of true self-love. When I did that, things started to shift, Lisa Winter. There were things that happened, boundaries happened, some conversations had to stop, some conversations had to extend. It was a whole redefinition. So really part of why this platform really exists is to really ignite that feeling of people getting back to themselves and loving themselves and making decision and healing practices based on that start as a foundation, because it's so incredibly important.
Definitely.
Now, I want to make sure that I have a clean segment, Miss Lisa Winter, that gives us the overarching goals of the services that you provide, or maybe just a 1, 2, 3 liner about your services in core. And then also give us some good connection points, whether that is your website, your social media handles, whatever you want to provide for contact information. We want to make sure that we have that now. So I will cue over to allow you to do that.
Okay, that's lovely. So my main goal from writing the book and offering mentoring, because I on my website, which is childrenofthecosmos.bigcartel.com, which is where you can find a copy of my book, so you can purchase it if you would like, or you can go to the calendar and select a time where we can chat over Zoom. And with the mentoring, as you go down to the box, you'll really see that it's not all about spirituality. You can literally choose an option where we just sit and talk and honor your child. So we talk about the mother, we talk about the child, we talk about the family, and it's literally just having that friend, that person that understands what you've been through and able to bring a holistic approach to it. I wouldn't say I'm healed. I don't think we ever heal. I think it's a continuation of that healing journey. And like many women out there, I will have days when I am triggered and something will literally spiral back down, and I'll be like, oh, well, she would be 2 years old now, or she'd been getting ready to go to preschool. It's things like that when I see other children with their families, and it's just little triggers that bring me back to, I should have that with my Aubrey, that I sometimes think I have to take time out. And it's really important to take time out and to, if you want to sit in solitude, which I quite often like to, because then I go back into myself and I pour love back into myself. But that's what I'm offering for these women that would like to connect through my mentoring service. It's, yes, if you want to, I will guide you to help you connect with your child in spirit, so that you can do that anytime you want in the privacy of your own home. You can share messages with loved ones, families, whatever you would like to achieve from that side. But also I'm offering all the stages in between. I'm literally quite happy to sit with a woman who just feels she needs to scream and cry and just literally get all those raw primordial feelings out, which we all had initially when you first hear it. And then I'm happy to work with a woman where we just talk about how she'd like to remember her child, ceremonies that they might like to plan for their children. I quite often do a ceremony every time it's getting close to the due date of Aubrey. We kind of do like a message in a bottle, but we try to do it so it's environmentally friendly. So it's actually, instead of glass bottles, it's on palm leaves, and the messages are wrote on biodegradable paper, and the palm leaves are wrote from myself, my children, my family, and we send them out to sea. And from a spiritual point of view, I know Aubrey is able to receive those messages energetically anyway, but it's nice to have a tangible task to do with your loved ones, to listen to the messages they wrote, and for me to read out my message and to share that in the warmth of a family. But initially, I did the mentoring because not all women have support from their family. That was a really key thing that I learned along my journey, is that some women feel that they're very alone in this journey. And I wanted to be that friend, that someone that was there for them should they need it. And I don't take payments. The book I do take payments for, sorry, so that was incorrect. But I do take payments for the book, but I don't take payments for the mentoring. It's just a donation of whatever the woman can offer. And then 10% of that goes to the local baby loss charity here in the UK, which is Towards Tomorrow Together. And they help support women from pregnancy loss, from miscarriage, from stillbirths, and from infant loss due to cot death and so forth. So 10% of any money that's raised from my sales of my book or any donations received from mentoring will go to that baby loss charity.
Oh, I love it. And I honor your space in this walk. I know it's not a heavy load, but it's also too, one of the things that happens, you are dealing with yours, but you're also mentoring women who are dealing with their own trauma. So I teeter in this kind of even battle with my own mission, because there's the me that pours, but also the me that has to step aside, because sometimes I've poured a little bit too much and I have to kind of refill to be able to continue my mission. So I pray that you are doing that, Lisa Winter, because the work that you do is very heavy. So I'm making sure, I hope that you do that. And let me just tell you something. I honor you for being here. I told you at the beginning that this is great work. I honor your space here, and I really treat these as sacred spaces for women to come and do their thing and tell about the work that they're doing. So I want to make sure that I go to the segment for final thoughts. This is where we cue over to our guests and tell us to give us some great parting words for this space, and really something that captures the essence of Lisa Winter. I will allow you to have your final thoughts, and I'll be back to close the show.
This is a message to anyone that's listening to this podcast right now. And I just want to let any woman that's listening to really understand that I see you, I hear you, and I validate every single one of you. I've been there and it tore my world apart, and I honestly couldn't see a way of picking myself back up, but I did. And you will too. And if you don't have support of loved ones around you or any family for whatever reason, then please reach out to me, because no woman should have to go through this alone. And I will make sure that I could be there for any woman that needs to have that friend through this time. You are loved more than you know.
I love it. So if someone is watching this and she said this is virtual, so you can be anywhere in the world, and Lisa is there with open arms to help you. So we definitely thank Lisa for that. And to everyone that's out there in the Her Voice Shines podcast, I'll tell you, miraculous things happen when you let your voice shine. I really pray and hope that you honor your own journey and do what you need to do to give back to loving yourself. If you take nothing else from this podcast, I really hope that you take that And like the old church folks say, I love you and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'll be back with another amazing woman on the Her Voice Shines podcast really in no time. But until then, we love you and we're out.